Hi, and welcome to the first lesson in the blending mode class, the powerful blending modes. They are very powerful. They make Photoshop and Photoshop Elements fun, and that's what we're going to learn in this class. When you do, you learn. So we have hands-on learning, and you're going to be working with photos and the textures I give you in this class. That's what we do in most of the classes at Hummy's World. You learn by doing. Yummy textures. You're going to have 40 downloads to play with. And you'll find I start calling them yummy in the videos. I I really feel they're yummy. I just look at them and I go, that's so yummy. So please excuse me if I use yummy a lot. But some are so, some so not, but all can be good. So some of the textures are yummy. Some of them are not because it was just hubby and I playing at the kitchen table and I scanned them in, but all can be good. So sometimes I'm going to give you a texture and you're going to look at it and you're going to go, "Ooh, that's not so yummy." And uh, and then you're going to watch what I do with it and you're going to say, "Hey, but that's pretty cool." Okay, so we have some not so fun rules to go through. In the beginning, especially as we're going through the blending modes, only use the texture I give you so everyone can go back and play with the same texture to try to get the same effect as you did. So in the beginning, we're only using the texture that I give you for that particular lesson. Also, only use the blending mode we are working with in the lesson. After you go through the blending modes, we will have combining lessons with more advanced techniques shared in the videos, and you can have the freedom to use different blending modes and share your recipe. Please only use any textures from the previous lessons though, and there are a lot of them, so don't use textures that you've gotten from other sources, because the whole idea is that um, we can tell each other which texture we use so somebody else can go and try to get that with the same texture on their images, and that's how we learn. Um, of course, use other textures in your other classes at Hummy's World. That's perfectly fine, and share those resources that way. Only do techniques learned in videos or previous videos so everyone is learning at the same pace and not jumping ahead. Wait for the fun advanced techniques in the future videos. Of course, rules are meant to be broken, but please be courteous. So one of them I can think of is some of you might want to jump in and start using brushes, but we don't really learn about brushes till one of the ending lessons. So, try to stick with some of the skills that we've learned in the video or the previous videos. That way, when you do something and you're sharing and we're all learning, the other students can already have those skills too. Do the lessons in order because they do compound on each other um, in a slightest way, not hugely, but you do learn some things in one video that are referenced in later videos. Share as your recipe by getting a screenshot of your layers palette and share your steps in text. Totally not required, but that's what's going to make it fun. If you get a screenshot, I'm in Windows and I have what's called a snipping tool, and it's really easy to use. Just hit start and search for snipping tool and you'll find it. And I think most people have tried using that already. If not, certainly ask and I can do a video if we need one. Stick with me during the harder lessons as they are meant to make you think outside the box and to make you work with just one layer style to learn about it. Some of those layer styles are tough, and you'll get to them and you'll say, what in the world am I going to do with this? And you're going to be tempted to use other layers, other blending modes. Did I say layer style? Aha! I got layer style in here. I meant blending mode. Stick with the blending mode for that lesson. And make yourself, and stick with us and don't drop it. Don't say, oh, it's too hard, because then you're going to miss some of the more fun lessons where it gets easier, or where we're combining textures. Here is the blending mode tips part of the introduction. This is kind of an important area now. We're done with the not so fun rules. Blending is simply how two layers are blended into each other, or more if you end up with more layers, but just two layers. And it's all about the math, and we're going to be working and learning about the math. We're not going to go into great detail, but we're going to give you the math that the program does. The program can only do what it's programmed to do. And one way for the creators of programs to tell the program what to do is to give it some calculations. And so that's what blending modes are. They're all about calculations that the program was told to do when you click on that blending mode. And in order to do the math, you have to know a few things. That white is 255, black is 0, and a 50% gray is 127.5, but you actually can't get a 127.5. You can either get a 126 or 128. And so either one of those is close enough to 50% gray. So I've got my program open here, and let's go peek at the color picker in here. And each color in here, especially down here in the RGB, each color is, again, all about the math, assigned numbers. And so that's how the program works with colors. And so down here, we are in black, total black, and you see black has the number 0 in actually all different, in HSB and in RGB and in the hexagram. So it's got the number 0, and it's easy to remember that it's 0 because black you can think of as like absence of color. And if we go to the extreme of white, you're going to see, and down here in the RGB, it's 255 in all areas. And so every color between black and white, black being on one side of the scale of colors and white being on the other side, has a number between 0 and 255. So if we just randomly click out here, you can see these are assigned. This is mostly 69. I guess if I put this one 69, oh, well, we get grayscale. But 68 and 68, so there's combinations of numbers, but each one in between is assigned a number between 0 and 255. Now, if you want to get 50% gray, it's easiest to just put 0, 0, and 50 in the HSB. But you're going to see it gave it 128 because it can't have the 127.5. These are only round numbers. Let's see what happens if we go down to 127. You're going to see it's still 50%. So let's see what happens when we go down to 126. It goes down to 49. So 127 or 128 are both the 50%. And that's kind of important to look at, especially with the brightness. when you are using blending modes. Okay, let's go back to our PowerPoint and go to the next tip. See what they do. So we're going to actually see what they do in each of the lessons when we're going through the blending modes. And the upper layer is the gradient black to white, and the lower layer is the color. So this is the graphic I'm talking about that we're going to use. This is got a gradient from black to white. So we're going to look at this with each blending mode in the beginning of each lesson, at least until we get through the blending modes, to see what it does and to think about it and to study the math. A few of them we're going to actually do the math, the simple math. The others you're just going to get the formula. And then we also have down here at the bottom black, white, and a 50% gray. So we can see what it does for those. Noting what it does for a lesson, like if it makes no change to the black or makes no change to the white, and some of them make no change to the 50% gray. Noting what it does helps you to use a texture with more purpose. And so that is what we're going to be doing. And blending mode categories. So let's take a look at the blending mode categories. I've made this graphic. It's going to be on the introduction page, so you can always find it. But the normal category is the normal and the dissolve blending modes. So each of these are in categories, and you're going to be seeing when we go through the lessons why they're in categories, because they all react very similarly in the categories, similarly yet different. Then we have the darken category. So all of these are in the darken category, and you can see they're easy to see with the categories because they actually have lines in it. Let me make this so it's not locked. So see here, we actually have the lines, and you can actually, it looks like it highlights the line. Interesting. So there's the groups, and then the next group is the lighten group. So all of these lighten and do similarly. And these are contrast. Now, you'll see when we get to the contrast why they're contrast. Basically, it's because they use the formulas from both the lighten and the darken. So you have dark on one scale, you're black, and you're lighten on the other scale, you're white, and they contrast each other. If you have a black text on a white background such as this, there's enough contrast that you can read it. If you have a white text on a white background, you cannot read it. There is no contrast. And so these, when you get down to these, it actually they start combining the textures from these two layers, these two categories, and that's why they're called contrast. This section, the difference in the exclusion, is called invert. Invert is the exact opposite on the color wheel. So if you have, I think red and green are opposites on the color wheel, and that's what makes this so difficult to use. These here is because you get some really crazy things especially if you're using two colors on your two layers. And then we have the component. Now there are three components, and that each one of these focuses on. And if you go back to the course 1 at Hummy's World, there's a lesson on the color picker, and you'll see the three components in there being color itself, or hue, saturation, and lightness and darkness. And so we'll talk about the formulas and how more specifically when we get to these lessons and how each of the components is utilized. And I think you're going to be using these a little bit more after you learn about those lessons. And let's go on. Opacity is your friend. Some of these are really ugly, really ugly. And if you lower your opacity, it can make it beautiful. As soon as you put on that texture and that blending mode, you're going to go, ack! Remember, always go up here and lower your opacity to see what it does, and because suddenly it might become beautiful. It's true. Okay, remember about invert. Now, we're not going to use invert so much with the first set of the lessons. Please don't do that because you're not going to learn about the texture. But you can do and use this tip certainly after we get out of the first, after we finish with luminosity. We're going to start in we're going to start from top to bottom. We're not going to do one for normal, of course, and go through each of them, and that's where you have to stick with one texture and one blending mode. After that, you can do this kind of tip. And you can combine more textures and you can have more freedom. So invert, if you have the wrong texture, such as darkness or lightness. Darken takes dark information in a texture and blends it into the layer below, and lighten, the lighten group or category takes light information and textures and blends it into the layer below. So depending on what your layer below is, you may want to take a texture because you want to use that and you want to just invert it to make it work. And I'm going to show you that here in just a second, but because you may be wanting to use the darken like multiply texture, and your layer below may be the wrong lightness, because if your image is also dark and you're using a darken texture, your image is going to get even darker. If your image is a real light image, you've used too much exposure in your camera, then and you apply one of the lighten blending modes, then it's going to get even lighter. So using the opposites, always pay attention because your image will make a big difference in how you use the blending modes, because it takes 2 layers to blend, just like it takes 2 layers to dance. Love that. Okay, our layers are dancing. So let's go in and look. See, I pulled in one of the textures from one of the classes, and you can see we've got some dark in the middle and some light around the outside. And so let's say you want to use this stuff around the outside in your image. Of course, this lighten is light, so it's going to work well with the darken things, but it's not going to work well on the outer edge with the lighten. So you can make this texture work simply by hitting Control-I, and now you can see where it was where it was light around the edge, it is now dark, and so it's going to work better now with the opposite category of blending modes. So if your image now is light and you have this dark, you can, apply a lighten. I think I might have said that backwards. Anyway, we're not going to go that far. We're going to get into that later. Just remember, after we finish the luminosity, feel free to do invert on your layers, on your textures, and to get the right lightness or darkness in your texture so that it works with your photo. Let's go do another tip. blending modes can also be found on the painting and editing tools. Now, we're not going to really do this in these classes. That might be a whole new class, but or an extra 20 sets of lessons from 41 to 60. But actually, we're not going to do that. But I just want to point it out. When you're learning these textures, you're going to see, or when you're learning these blending modes, you're going to see them in other tools, and you may begin to notice them more and more, such as, that's a selection tool. Let's find a painting. Brush is a painting tool. So here it says mode, and here's all the same blending modes. So learning how to use them is even going to help you learn how to use the other tools. Here is, let's just try, see, the clone tool has them, and the gradient tool has them. There are actually a lot of tools. This is the dodge tool, and it has just a few of them, but you'll be learning how these work. Darken and lighten, yeah, those are blending modes. And actually that was the smudge tool. This is the dodge tool. So it's not in the dodge tool, but it's in a lot of the painting and the editing tools. Here's the healing brush tool, and you see it's got some of them in it. So yeah, mixer brush tool. No, I don't even know. I have not even played with that. Replacement color has just the component ones in it. So what I'm saying is that when you're learning how all these blending modes work and paying attention to them, it's going to help you use other tools even better if you want to get to playing with them there. I just wanted you to be aware that they are in other tools. Now, we will be using masks a lot, and there's one key phrase you need to learn about masks. Black conceals and white reveals. And I don't remember when masks came about in Photoshop Elements. I think about version 7 maybe. So most people have a version higher than that and have the layer masks now. And so basically here is adding a layer mask to this texture layer. I'm going to Control I it so it's a more pleasant texture again. And you click directly on the mask. Don't click on the texture itself. Click on the mask and then use your brush. Whoops, I clicked off of it. Use your brush tool on the mask, and hitting D on your keyboard makes your foreground and background colors black and white. And so it's already all white. White reveals, so we're seeing all of the texture. Black conceals. And so if I click on here, I've got my opacity lowered. Lowering your opacity is a great tip. But you can see now it's concealing where I am brushing black on the mask. And if I switch and go back to white, you can see it's revealing the texture layer again and hiding what is below it. So that is a quickie on using masks. To remember, you can go between this one and this one. You see a little corners around it for which one it is selected, but I always just hit it before I go again, so I'm not accidentally drawing right on my texture. And lower your opacity, because when you lower your opacity on here, it actually is doing a gray. And if you hit Alt and click on the mask, you can see the mask itself. So you see it's doing kind of a gray. So grayscale Here, let's go down even more. See, it's nice, and each time you hit it, it gets darker. And so you can gradually add colors. I'm going to hit Alt and click on my mask again, and you see what I get with that. To delete a mask, I can grab it and drop it to the trash can. It's going to ask me if I want to apply it first. Most of the time I don't. I just want to delete the mask, and it's gone. So that's a quick 101 on masks, because we are going to be using them a lot. One more tip, we're not going to actually use this, but I do want to show this to you. You may have seen sometimes something called a pass-through, and you think to yourself, what in the world is that? Because you can't get it. Well, Photoshop Elements users cannot get it because they don't have what's called a group of layers, but they can get it if they're using an action, and whoever created the action groups it, and you look at it and you think, what in the world's with that? And basically it's only visible for groups. Selecting 2 or more textures with blending modes, and you Control G for group. That's why Control G does not work I even forget the keyboard shortcut, because I generally when you group 2 layers, I generally just put my mouse between the 2 layers and click down, and it groups like that. That's one kind of grouping that we talk about in Photoshop Elements. But you see, I think, what is it? I think it's Alt Control G, and there you go. That's Alt Control G is what works to do that in the full version, but in Photoshop Elements it's just Control G. So we're not talking about that kind of grouping. Okay, I'm going to show you it here in a second. We're talking about the Control G, how it works in the full version of Photoshop. Pass-through keeps it in its original blending mode, the original blending modes working together. And you change the group to a blending mode, and it changes all those in the group to the same blending mode. So be careful of that. Let's go ahead and duplicate this and show you what and show you what I'm talking about. Why is that not duplicating? Okay. There's always more than one way to do something in Photoshop. So I have 2 of these, and I'm going to make this one a screen blending mode. I'm going to make this one a multiply blending mode. So we have 2 different blending modes on these layers. And I can hold the Control key down and select both of them. Of course, if I have more than layers than that, I could select more. And then I'm going to hit Control G, and it puts these into a group. A group is kind of like a folder. They are in this group, and I can kind of hide it, or I can go ahead and see my layers. But you see that the group now is a pass-through. The group itself is passing through any blending modes, and it's keeping this as the multiply, and it's keeping this as screen. That's what pass through does. Now if you click on the group itself and you change it from pass through to, let's say, linear burn, look what it did. It made each of these work as linear burn. Every layer in the group is going to have linear burn, or whatever you put, whatever texture you put. So that is what the grouping does. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and ungroup, and I'm going to delete this texture. I think I'm going to delete it. Let's just get back to a normal texture. So I think somewhere along the line I skipped one. Oh, here we go. We didn't do this. I don't know. I must have double clicked. So let's go back and do this one. I know that this is important. We will be using this a lot. Scrolling the blending modes. you can use the shift and the plus or minus keys. So let's say you're on this texture and I want to try this, and then I got to click here and try this. You got an extra click to open this up every time to change the blending mode. So what you can do is hold down your shift key and use the plus or minus keys. And why is it not working? It was working earlier. I don't know why, but my program is acting funky all of a sudden. I do not understand it. It is not working. But I am just pressing the shift and the plus or minus keys. I wonder if I hit save. There, that worked. It took the funk out of my program. I don't know why, but I have been struggling with that. When I hit save, it fixes it. So right now I'm hitting the plus key and it's scrolling through it. I'm hitting the minus key. So you can scroll through them this way. Now, the way I tend to do it is with the arrow keys, because my plus keys are far up on my keyboard and I can't easily, I gotta look for them, and if I'm not sitting quite right or whatever, I can't easily find them on my program. So what I tend to do is scroll through them with the arrow keys. Now you can't just start scrolling because you see it moves. You can't just start hitting your arrow key because you see it moves your texture. What you need to do is choose one of them. And after you choose one of them, you can use the up and down arrow key to scroll. And I tend to do that more often just because the arrow keys are so easy to find on my laptop keyboard. So either way, and remember that, scrolling is a great way to see what each of the blending modes does. This is what a lot of us do when we use our blending modes, is to just scroll until we get one that works. But we want to try to be able to find them with more purpose after these lessons rather than just randomly scrolling. But this is always an option for you to do. And if you pay attention to it, it will also teach you what we are doing. So I think, yep, that is it. We are at the end of the powerful blending mode introduction class for this lesson. Just kind of post in the forum maybe what you learned, and let me know so that you've watched this video, and I'll give you credit. And the next lesson starts our hands-on fun. See you around the bend.